Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast, where our purpose is to help create a better future. Learn from our world's experts how to improve your organisation sustainably. Learn how to achieve and sustain an excellence journey for yourself, others, and the planet.
And I'm your host, Brad Jevons, coming to you from Brisbane, Australia. We are proudly brought to you in association with SA Partners, a world-leading business transformation consultancy. SA Partners are a truly purposeful company focused on helping organisations achieve sustainable improvement for themselves, others, and the planet. Welcome to episode 114 of the Enterprise Excellence Podcast. It is such a pleasure to have Mr Nick Foy on the show with us today. Nick is the founder, CEO, and chief evangelist of Silverdale. He is a process improvement and technology guru that is focused on helping everyone achieve results. Today we'll be discussing capturing knowledge across the whole organisation. Let's get into the episode. Nick, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
I appreciate it. Nick, what's your backstory? Like, what led you down this path towards Silverdale and business improvement and all that you do?
Yeah, so you can probably tell from my accent that I'm originally from Scotland. And like every good Scottish boy at the age of 16, I started working at a whiskey distillery. And I started working there during the summer, which was great. My job was to walk up and down the yard with production schedules, and I loved it until it got to winter. And suddenly the walking up and down the yard in the snow and the ice wasn't quite so much fun. So really that led me into process improvement because, you know, we got some fax machines in the production office and the production line, and we started faxing this information backwards and forwards. You've got to remember this is 30 years ago, so before we even had email, that we were coming up with these things. So that's what really got me into process improvement, and I stayed really in that sphere for the last 30 years through working at Glenmorangie at the whiskey company for 6.5 years, and then made my way into logistics, supply chain, manufacturing, and then eventually into the technology part of that, looking at ERP systems, implementations, went through consulting, and then ended up working at Amazon as a business and tech leader there, again, kind of bringing both my operations experience, systems experience, all really coming together into process improvement. And that's really what led me to Silverdale 3 years ago, which really is a culmination of all my kind of 30 plus years of experience, all coming together really nicely into what we're building here at Silverdale.
That's neat. And Nick, boy, from the whiskey distillery and through and then hitting Amazon, you've been in some companies that are prominent brands, but also scaling quickly. Like, I bet you've seen some wild rides through your time with the pace of change and improvement.
Oh, 100%. Going back to my Amazon days, which was kind of 10 years ago when I first started there. And it was a really interesting time at Amazon when I first started there. I was one of 20,000 employees worldwide, which felt like a big company at the time. I left 5 years later. I was then one of 120,000 employees just 5 years later, and now over 1 million employees globally. One of the lessons I learned from my time at Amazon was, if it doesn't work at scale, it doesn't work. And when you look at the growth that Amazon was experiencing and still is experiencing, it really does become true. If it works just for today's volume, then it isn't going to work tomorrow. It ain't going to work next week. So you constantly could be building with future scale in mind. And again, that's something which I brought with me into my Silverdale days as well.
It's great advice, isn't it, Nick? Because often companies can get stuck at the scale they're at, and if they're not putting in the systems and structures and I guess leadership behaviors to right at the start to be able to scale rapidly, they're going to hit the wall, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. We see that time and time again. Again, if you're not ready to operate this process, this system, this sales, if it doesn't work at 10 or 50x of where you are today, then you're never going to get there. That's the reality. You're just constantly just be turning that wheel, faster and harder, as opposed to changing the wheel. And that's really what we help companies do here at Silverdale as well.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat. I got this burning question in the back of my mind because I'm thinking some listeners on this topic would be thinking, yeah, but you got to invest a lot of money. It's really hard to get that sort of structures and be ready to be able to scale like that. But is it hard to be able to be prepared with the right systems and structures to be able to scale rapidly?
So two questions there, I think. Is it hard and do you have to spend a lot of money? Yes, it's hard, definitely, because, it's got to be a conscious thought. It doesn't just happen by accident. I don't think any of us are really hardwired to really operate and get ready for scale. That's, we come in, we do our day, we go home again, and we're not really thinking about, well, what does this look at 20, 50x of where I am today? Do you have to spend a lot of money? Well, in the past, getting access to professionals such as, we have at Silverdale was very expensive. You had to get yourself one of those top tier consulting companies or invest a lot of money in systems, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in those sorts of systems. And that's one of the reasons why Silverdale exists. Our vision is to democratize ERP. So those systems that companies can use to run their entire business. Our vision is to really democratize that for businesses of any size and scale. So whatever your budget is, we can get you access to the right systems to help you scale your business. And that's why I started Silverdale. That's why we're really passionate about it here.
Yeah, we're in a new era, aren't we, with technology sort of meeting innovation, and then with the right structures and systems, it's not as difficult as it used to be in the past to be able to, do what you need to do and go forward rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, back in the day, everyone would reach for Excel to manage this stuff, and there's, thankfully these days there are far better ways of managing your business. If you're still doing it in Excel, or even you moved on to Google Sheets, then we got some news for you. There's a much better way of doing that now.
Yeah, nice. Who are some people that inspired you along the way on your journey? From the distillery all the way through into Amazon and ongoing. Who are some people that you really learnt from and looked up to?
It's a great question. I don't think that, I could name quite a few individuals, but when I look at, what they all have in common, really these are people who've really challenged me, right? And, not accepted my level of performance, and, kind of give me a kick up the ass and say, hey, you can do better on this, or go think about this, or go think bigger, go think wider, what the implications on people up and down the supply chain from where you are. Those people who really make me sit back and be uncomfortable, and really think about what I'm doing, and really not accepting kind of mediocre performance. When I look back at it now, yeah, it was a pain, very uncomfortable, and upsetting at times to get that kind of feedback. But actually, those are the people that really, kind of projected me forward and kind of got me where I am today. So
that's great, mate. That's great. Nick, we're talking today about capturing knowledge across the organization, which is a big topic. Like, why is it important to be able to capture knowledge across the organization?
Yeah, what's one of the things we do here at Silverdale, we did it from day one, is really making sure that everything we do, if one person knows something at Silverdale, then everybody needs to know it. And when you start a company, it's quite easy to do when there's only 1, 2, 3, 4 of you. Sharing that knowledge, regular phone calls, chats, etc., can be achieved pretty easily. As we grew and scaled, now up to nearly 40 employees, and of course during COVID, with everybody being remote, it was really difficult, and we really found that that information was being lost. And why it's important for organizations, well, reducing errors and conflicting information. How many times have we spoken to a company and got conflicting information from different people in call centers or whatever it may be, or different information in store versus online versus on the phone. You can get faster resolution to problems. You can reuse the information, make it repeatable, make it understandable, and again, helps your business to scale. If you're not really capturing that knowledge and then using that knowledge, because capturing it is one thing, but then making it usable and accessible is something entirely different. But unless you're doing that, you're going to constantly be running into the same things, the same frustrations, and people are going to start making it up, right? Someone's going to have one way of solving something, someone's going to have another way of doing it, and it develops into a very inconsistent experience, both internally, but a very inconsistent experience for your customers. So capturing that knowledge and reusing that knowledge, is a key part of being able to scale and make a business, grow.
So I guess it's within an organization to be able to scale and really, grow into the future rapidly. Capturing knowledge, but then having that rapid communication capability is really important. Like, is that one of the key hearts to it that you see?
Yeah, I would say so. I think about knowledge management really in kind of three big buckets. One is capturing it, one is accessing it, and the other one is using it. And if you capture, search, and use, do those three things, I think you're doing pretty well. A lot of I've been seeing a lot of companies who do a really good job at kind of capturing a lot of information, a lot of data, a lot of information, but actually it just sits there, because no one can access it and no one knows how to use it again. And it then just becomes an exercise of, capturing data. I mean, we're just capturing terabytes of data just for the sheer hell of it. And that's not really useful to you as an organization. So really, I would say that's the three things I would sum it up as.
And Nick, how would you say to go about this whole path of being able to capture the right data and then use it effectively and share knowledge across the organization? What's some of the key steps that you'd mention as part of that?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing to understand about knowledge management is it doesn't just happen. It doesn't happen by accident. And it doesn't matter how many times the CEO or somebody else says, oh, we should do something about that, or we've seen this before. Haven't we done this before? Didn't someone else ask us the same question? Now, no matter how many times you're having those kind of conversations, really, nothing's really going to change as a result of that. You have to make a conscious effort to actually start capturing, accessing, and using your data and information that you have. So don't just think that somehow by accident that information is going to become reusable. It doesn't. Things hide in people's inboxes, they hide in chats, they hide, in all sorts of different places. And the reality is people don't really think about it, right, in their day-to-day work. It's not really something that everyone's thinking of, I solve something for a client or I answer a question. No one really thinks about, is somebody else asking the same question, or should that go in our FAQs, or should that go somewhere else, or put it more prominently on our website? Why do I keep getting asked the same thing? People aren't really doing that. They're really just thinking about the question that's right in front of them, getting that customer or client satisfied there and then, and they don't really think about reusing that later. So it has to be a conscious effort to doing that. So that's the first thing I would say. You've got to have a project or a program or a mechanism to be able to do that, and to do that well. And you've got to have when we think about these things here at Silverdale, really we think about kind of building mechanisms around these sorts of topics. So do you have a process to make it happen? Do you have a tool, whether it's a system or sticky notes or a whiteboard or something? And do you have a tool to make it happen? Is there adoption? So are people actually adopting the process and using the tool that you put in place? And then, of course, is there an audit? Do you have a way of making sure that those things you put in place are actually being used? Unless you have a mechanism to capture the data, the knowledge management within your company, then again, don't be surprised that it's just a good intention. And we just all said it to make ourselves feel better, but we didn't actually do anything. So really focus on the mechanism is a really important way to do that. The other thing I would say as well, which I think is a very important step to getting better knowledge management, is get out of email. Email is a killer of knowledge management. Email is just things sitting in an individual's inbox. It will kill your knowledge management exercise quicker than anything else, because that information, you can't find it, you can't see it, you can't get it across the organization. It's just in one place with one person, and if that person's not around, guess what? No one else can see that. So get out of email, and that's probably one of the most difficult steps, quite honestly.
I think, Nick, when you think about it, I think email would be the primary knowledge management system for the bulk of people. But I guess I'm just assuming that comes from us really thinking from an individual perspective. Like an email, I can find what I need to find.
Right. Good for you. It doesn't help the person sitting next to you, or the person who's coming after you, or the person, the other, side of the world who's got exactly the same question or exactly the same problem, and is going to spend, the same amount of time you did finding out that nugget of information that's going to save a sale or help satisfy a client or solve a problem. And that's the problem with email, is it's your own personal inbox and it's just for you, and that is the big issue with email.
Yeah, it's a nightmare of a system, isn't it, when it comes down to it?
Oh, yeah,
also,
absolutely.
when you think the distraction and impact of noise across the organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
What's your view on where things are going with a lot of the other communication softwares now, like that people are starting to use a lot, like Slack and stuff like that? What's your views on that system?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of interesting. I think we had this wave of this kind of almost like social kind of management, social interactions within companies, things like Slack, more recently around Microsoft Teams, for example, or things like, more specific things like Asana and those kind of tools, which I think are getting better and better all the time, quite honestly. I think, especially when you look at Microsoft Teams, I think Microsoft has done a really good job with that product and really getting, really good adoption of that across their user base. So I think, those tools are great because, again, you can search now in some of those tools across documents, across chats, across, all the other types of conversations that happen within the tool. So that's definitely improving. But again, sometimes when you put in a search term, or you try and find something in your chats in Microsoft Teams, and trust me, you'll give up on it pretty quickly. On its own, it's again not really a knowledge management system. Okay, it's a tool, definitely, but it's probably not the best tool out there. But it's a great start. But again, it's just a tool. Unless you have a process, unless you've got adoption, unless you've got an audit, guess what? It's just a bunch of information. You might as well just stick it in a bucket and put a blindfold on. Right?
We're going to go back to the email, or we're going to go back to whatever we've previously used. So, Nick, with it, you've had a lot of experience with this over the years, and the first one is to have that conscious effort, which is having that project and that systematic approach to it. I guess what do you see happens if people don't have that project, that structured approach to it, where they're actually planning how we do this and executing it in some sort of project structure? Like, I guess this is a common topic I see across all sorts of change in an organization.
Yeah, well, you're just going to end up with a lot of frustration, and a lot of redo, a lot of effort on doing it again, and a lot of frustrated users, as well as a lot of frustrated managers and leaders, because if you just tackle something without a mechanism in place, then again, it's just good intentions, and it just makes you feel better for 5 minutes until you move on to the next thing. And without this rigid structure in place, then as I say, you're just pandering to make yourself feel better, and it just won't work. So getting rid of some of the fluff around this communication as well, right? Again, going back to email, but we'll get off that in a minute. But another issue as well, not just email, but there's just too many systems. There's information in too many places, right? So you've got Microsoft Teams, and you might even have Slack, and you might have your email, and then of course you've got Salesforce, and then you've maybe got your Survey Monkey, where you do your surveys, and then you've got all constant contact for your email. You've got information all over the place, okay? And not only is it more difficult to search all those different places, it's also really easy to get into a situation where you've got contradictory information, okay? So, an email address for a customer, for example, if that exists in 3, 4, 5, 6 different systems, and the customer changes their email, which one is correct, right? So even that basic level of knowledge management, knowledge about your customer, right, in that circumstance, spread across too many systems, again, will start causing a lot of issues. So, if we do this with some of our new clients, as we ask them, hey, how many different systems do you use? It's a very simple question. Very rarely do we have a client who can actually answer it. And when they do answer it, they're generally wrong, okay? And they're normally wrong by a factor of about 3 to 5 times. We talk to the C-level people, they think, yeah, we're probably using 8, 10 systems. You start getting out there amongst the users, then you realize actually there's probably 30, 40 systems that are being used. So with so many different disparate systems, there's no way you can manage the knowledge across all those places.
No, I've seen it time and time again in organizations where out of some of these 5 to 10 systems, there's actions and things they need to do too coming out of them. And so people's heads are just spinning trying to keep across all the required actions and tasks they've got, let alone being able to draw knowledge out of their systems. Nick, how do companies go about taking control of this? Like actually, of course we're saying they got to form a project and actually take a systematic approach to the change. The next is then, but I guess understanding all these disparate systems, but starting to look at the right mechanisms, processes, and tools that you mentioned. How do they go about that?
Yeah, so one of the first things that you do, of course, is pick up the phone and speak to me. So and we'll help anyone with working through these sorts of challenges. But really coming up with what information is it that's useful to our customers? What are the common threads that go right throughout the company? So looking at, Pareto was right. Okay, so this, just take 100 of your latest help tickets, for example, from customers. Just take 100 of them, okay, and just bucket them into categories and see if there's any common threads amongst those. You'll probably find some, maybe not all, but you're going to find some common threads there. So then think about, okay, how could we have done this differently? How could we have made this self-service? How could we have done this in a different way? How could we change the verbiage on our website or make it, an FAQ or something else? Think about, how you then answer that. And then think about how you'll then scale that. Okay, so how do we then start finding ways of categorizing our information, whether it's through trouble tickets, whether it's through requests, whether it's through phone calls, whether it's through chat, whatever it may be. And there's some great systems out there that will help you do that and actually look at the language that's being used and help you to categorize it. But honestly, just looking at it, manually is also a really good way of doing it. When you're then looking to roll this out across your team, you've got to have an easy way of capturing that information. I'll give you one example from our own company. When we started taking help tickets from our clients, and what we started finding was kind of common threads, customers asking for the same thing and trying to solve the same problem. So what we started doing was in our help ticket, we added a section for the solution. But what we then found was actually that wasn't very searchable, and it wasn't very easy for us to put that in a format that people could then use again. So we added a very simple button that simply says create knowledge. Okay, and all it does, it takes the problem statement, the solution statement, puts it together into a text file, and then posts it into our knowledge management system, which makes it searchable either by problem or by solution. So think about, where is your information being held, and how can you put some real simple tools in place to get that information into one place, whether it's a wiki, whether it's something that's searchable at least, and some great systems out there for doing that. The other thing I would say as well, as a big part of rolling this out, is you have to make it easy. Okay, so don't have lots of sign-offs and approvals, and if you're going to have a wiki, for example, make sure everybody can edit it, right? Don't hide things behind passwords. Don't put a lot of user rights around these things, right? Otherwise it becomes unusable. So getting that information accessible to everybody, you got to make it really easy for people to find it. It's got to be as easy as searching on Google. If it's not as easy as that, then people aren't going to use it.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's great advice. So really, it's I guess it's understanding those big tickets and what is causing the noise in the company. Pareto principle, I love it. And then you're running continuous improvement or project events to basically execute ways to centralize and simplify that data for people to be able to access again in the future. Because I guess when there's been an event and someone solves something, that's knowledge, isn't it?
And on its own, that's knowledge. Absolutely right. And building templates, building the right forms to capture information up front as well is also a really good way of kind of structuring that data on its way in, which means that afterwards you're kind of focused on, okay, if I'm going to use this data later, then actually I have to be able to use it and capture it in the right way in the first place. So it'll also start informing how you captured information in the first place as well.
I could see, Nick, with it, you're going to create that central knowledge system, But I guess there's a part too of just peeling back all these systems that we've built into a company and created complexity over the years. Like, how have you helped companies go about that, where you've definitely helped them, take knowledge which is just scattered everywhere and start to centralize it in one sort of blog type system of understanding, something that's really easily to search. What about where there's just all these softwares about the place? And do you actually need all these softwares that people have to get into all the time?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think when I look at, even, I don't know, probably 20 years ago, I guess, when I started in this ERP business, there was this phrase, this single view of the customer was a phrase that was used a lot, right? About, how do I get to see all my interactions with a customer over their lifetime? And the companies who do that well, and the companies who don't. Okay, just try calling an airline or calling a bank, for example, right? When they pick up the phone to you, do they know who you are, right? Do they see the last time you called in? Do they see the products that you've bought? Do they see, how you've interacted with their website, all the transcripts from previous conversations? Do they see the chat history? Can they see all that, or can they not? And you can always tell the ones that can. Oh, give me a couple. I just had to put you through to a different team, or I've got to log into a different system, or just you hear people saying that all the time in these customer service situations. And even companies who have a brick and mortar store and have an online store, again, those things don't always talk to each other either, right? So, reducing the number of systems and getting that true single view of the customer it's felt like a panacea for a very long time. Now, we've helped clients solve for that. The system, our system of choice is Odoo. That's the ERP system. We're an official partner of Odoo. And Odoo does a really good job of making sure that all those interactions are in one place. So the power of being, like, for example, again, just take our own company as an example, the power of me being able to, if my phone rings through Odoo, okay, and that number is recognized as one of our clients, that client record pops up on my screen even before I've answered the call, okay? And when I'm answering the call, I'm talking to the customer, I can see, oh, here's the number of tickets that client has open. I can see they've got 3 projects running with us. I can see how many tasks are outstanding. I can see the meetings that are set up with everybody in our company with that particular client. I can have a really intelligent conversation with that client right off the bat. They don't have to explain to me what their interactions are with my company. Okay, why should they, right? I can see all that in one place. That single view of the client and that single view of the customer is possible. But it isn't when you're running 5, 6, 10, 35 different systems, because guess what? You're going to log into the next one. You've probably forgotten the password anyway. So, you constantly find yourself having to search for this stuff. I regularly deal with our clients, who, to get a single view of the client, if they were to try and get a single view of their customer without, using the systems and the processes that we use, it would probably take them half a day. Realistically, half a day. Go log into 10, 12 different places, go get all the invoices rolled up into one place, all the sales of all the products, all the website visits that they've had into one place. Probably take you half a day. And your customer's not going to wait and hold for half a day while you figure that out. Okay, so this single view of the customer is a really great way, in fact, of kind of projecting that type of project, right? Why this information is important, because guess what? The single view of the customer is important, and that's a really good way to drive this kind of change.
I can imagine, especially when you think business excellence or enterprise excellence, it's all about the customer. But if your people who are trying to serve that customer can't just basically put their fingers on the data and knowledge that the customer needs, or the customer can't do it themselves, well, you're in trouble out of the gate, aren't you? Like you're creating lag, waiting, bad experiences, defects, all that bad stuff that we want to get rid of. I remember, Nick,
and we all, as I say, we all know the companies that do that really well, and we know the companies that really don't. And I would kind of challenge, everyone listening to this podcast and looking at their own business, I would challenge you to really think about, when have you experienced that? When have you experienced that really exceptional service, when that person really did have a single view of your business with them, right? And then think about a situation where it didn't exist. And then think about your interactions with your customers. What bucket would they put you in? And then that's what you need to start tackling.
I think what's going through my mind, Nick, is the power of Gemba, like senior leaders going and actually sitting in that call center for half a day and actually seeing what happens, or that service technician or whoever it may be that's serving your customer. Go be that person for a day and see what the cockpit's like. Like, do you have access to that knowledge and information right when you need it?
Yeah, absolutely. And Gemba is so important. You know, we have, almost 40 employees at Silverdale. I still answer help tickets. I have a team of people who job it is to answer help tickets. I still do it too. I jump in there and I'll take a couple of tickets every day just to see are the tools or the processes really working? Are we really, giving customers what they need? Sometimes our customers are quite surprised when they get a response from me on a ticket. It's like, oh my God, Nick's on the help desk today. Well, yeah, I am. It's vital to really stay attached to the business. And also, I challenge myself to spend a third of my time with customers and on their sites, in their manufacturing sites, with their call centers, with their office people, to really see what our processes and systems look like in the real world. There's nothing like seeing it in the real world to really make a difference. So Gemba is absolutely critical as part of this.
Yeah, Nick, we've just had a major airline in Australia where they, through COVID and labour shortages and all this, a lot of the senior executives have had to go down and handle baggage, so they've all for, I don't know, I guess weeks, had to become baggage handlers. I bet you there's going to be some dramatic, rapid improvement.
I'll bet those conference rooms in the next few months are going to be hot with improvements and with a lot of Kaizen events going on. I'm sure of it. That's a great way to get that change through. So I look forward to see what comes from that. I saw that news article the other day, and it made me chuckle a little bit, thinking, okay, I'll bet there's going to be some big changes in baggage handling.
Those baggage handlers, their life is going to get much better and customer outcomes are going to improve from their baggage point of view, because it's also rather rife at the minute with baggage getting lost. So this is going to drive rapid improvement. Creating a better future is about change for good. Change to help an organisation, its people, customers, the society it works in, and the planet. Change is not easy, but creating a culture of continuous improvement, small changes, as well as large strategic change, creates agility in an organisation. We are living in an amazing time where the knowledge to achieve this is readily available. The secret is in applying the knowledge, putting it into practice. To help with this, we have a monthly newsletter focused on this topic that will also help you connect with upcoming events, recent guests, and other learnings. We also have the Enterprise Excellence community that allows you to connect with others leading transformations, as well as our global experts, to go see, learn, and help gain knowledge from each other on how to truly put this knowledge into practice. If the monthly newsletter or community could help you, please go to enterpriseexcellencepodcast.com/contact to let us know, or reach out on LinkedIn or any other communication channel to myself, and we'll get you connected. Let's get back to the show. But Nick, great advice, and I just love the conversation around simplifying and centralizing technology on this. Like we've spoken about it from customer facing, but I guess I know from my own experience in life with factory automation and flow and all the side I was involved in, that single source of truth and that single access of knowledge in the factory or in the warehouse, it's the same story, isn't it? Like the factory, well, they're serving the warehouse potentially, right? So they are serving the external customer, but also the warehouse. If they can't just touch the information they need when they need it and make decisions, it's the same problem, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely the same problem. And clicking through, drilling down is something that we get our clients used to doing, right? Again, having everything all in one place means that it doesn't matter where I am in that supply chain, in that value stream, wherever I am, even if I'm right towards the end of that at shipping, for example, if it's that real last interaction before it goes on the truck and something happens, okay, can I get all the way back through the manufacturing process, through the bills of material, into the components, be able to see the history of that. Can I actually do that through my manufacturing system and inventory systems? Very few can. We work with a client down in Georgia, a very large printing company. And what's interesting is they have a lot of uniqueness within that printing business. And what they need to be able to do is, again, right at the end of their process, on a specific delivery, is see exactly which lot or what serial number was employed as part of the manufacturing process. And so that was really, a really interesting project for us to be able to show them how to actually get full traceability from a finished product all the way through to the original components and the purchase order and the RFQ that was created, and get access to the documents that were attached to it, and the pictures, videos, the measurements that were taken on the receipt of the original component, and being able to show them that within one place with just a few simple clicks, without having to go into lots of different systems. Just speeding up that information right across the value streams is really critical.
You're ultimately creating flow, aren't you? And I guess enterprise excellence at the heart of it is about helping people flow and products and services flow for customers rapidly, isn't it? And our technology platform nowadays can either help us or hinder us massively.
Yeah. Sometimes it does kind of feel like that, and that's one of the questions we ask ourselves quite often here. Is it helping or is it hindering? It's either doing one or the other, and if it's hindering you got to figure it out. And one of the things you made me think about when you were talking about flow there as well is, we still see a lot of our clients, a lot of our customers really still thinking in terms of departments, right, and functions. So whether it's sales, project management, manufacturing, shipping, distribution, whatever it may be, if someone isn't looking at their business in terms of work streams, at the moment, they've really got to get on the bandwagon on that one. Whenever processes pass from one department to the next, tends to be where the issues are. And guess what? If you just look at it department by department, you're going to miss a lot of opportunities for improvement, especially when when that information passes from one team to another. That's frequently where things are going wrong.
Yeah. I was just thinking that value stream and maybe mapping from a value stream perspective frequently.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I'm a value stream mapping freak. I love it. Every opportunity I get, I'm up there on the board with my post-it notes and putting my symbols on there. And there's no clearer way of being able to see the process from end to end. And quite frequently when you start that process, you go, great. Okay, we've got 10 post-its on the wall. Fantastic. Okay. Now, are you sure that's everything? Oh, actually, there's a couple more bits. Oh, actually, there's a few more things. And okay, 10 post-its suddenly becomes 50. And start realizing, okay, that's really what happens. That's not what you think. Leadership, that's what you think happens. Now, how does it actually happen on the floor? Again, using some Gemba helps you to validate that too.
Yeah, Nick, I love your approach, mate. I've been involved in many events like that with really forward-thinking IT managers, and man, the results you can get are massive. IT managers that actually use that map as part of it, but then also use that map as a guiding vision for their project. It's amazing outcomes. And I've also been involved in the other, where everything's sort of just done ad hoc and piecemeal, and it doesn't go well.
Yeah, and it's so easy when you start going down a technical route. It's so easy to get really blinkered on the technical solution, right? Technically it works great. Guess what? Technically, someone's not going to be sitting next to you when they're having to operate this process at 2 a.m, in -10 in a refrigerated warehouse, right? That's great. It works for you sitting at your nice comfy desk. It ain't going to work at 2 a.m, right, in the dark, dim corner of the warehouse, right? And so actually getting people involved in getting these processes out in the wild and seeing them in the real world is really the only time it works.
Yeah, I say that. I've always felt like a lot of companies, we get hot and sweaty on technology, then we look at the processes we could use to improve it, and then we think, how do we get the people to adopt it? Where it's like, let's flip that thing. Let's involve the right people. look at the process with value stream mapping and then think about how do we improve the technology? Like why we don't do that. It's logical,
Yes.
but
Yes.
we get just hung up on the tech, and
Yeah.
it leads to barriers, silos, mess, carnage, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The old adage is true. If you're going to change me, involve me, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse. I had a project a couple of years ago, one of our very first projects, working with a client in manufacturing, and we've been working with this client for a good 5-6 months on the project, and working with them on doing some user training, and they were taking on the task of doing user training. And what was interesting, we did the first site visit, arrived on site, went down to the warehouse, went to the receiving dock, and spoke to the team there doing receiving. I go, great. Hey, my name's Nick. I'm from Silverdale. We're helping your company to implement Odoo. And they just look at me and say, what are you talking about? What is Odoo? Who is Silver? Who are you? Why are you on my loading dock? It's like, oh,
this
okay.
is not going to go well.
Okay, I'm here this week to make sure everything's going well, but see, it's not. But again, it was because the technical team were like, yeah, we posted the training online. Yeah, we put it into our e-learning, and yeah, we gave people tasks to go look at it. Yeah, training's done, right? Okay, right. Well, you've done 30% of the job here.
Yeah, that's
and then
not involving.
really that's where the hard work starts, right?
Yeah. I love that how you simplified it. I think it's pinned to Roosevelt, isn't it? That saying that tell me and I'll forget, show me and I might know something, involve me and I'll understand.
Yeah.
I think I had a Peter on a previous podcast. He then said, get me engaged in the improvement and you got innovation or something like that. But it's golden knowledge, but it can be overlooked so quickly. But those techniques you've mentioned around Gemba, value stream mapping, forming the right project team, I guess that all helps with that third part of the adoption we're talking about. Like we've naturally blended onto the adoption step that you've spoken about.
Yeah.
Are there any other key parts of adoption you'd say, Nick?
Oh, absolutely. So really this when we look at a process and we look at a mechanism that's in place, within the adoption space, really we're looking for 4 things, right, within adoption. There's only really 4 reasons why a mechanism has not been adopted by the end users. 1, they weren't aware of it. They don't even know they should be doing it. Okay, that's the first thing. That happens all the time. Okay. Second thing is they don't have access to it, right? So they don't have the right user rights in the system, or they don't have the right tools to be able to access it. Okay. Or it'd be so many times, when we've been on site, we said, why don't you just click on that? Oh, I did click on that. Nothing happens. Oh, that's because someone didn't give you the right user rights. Okay. Let's go fix that. Okay. So, so either you didn't know about it, you don't have access to the right tools or the right part of the system to do it in the first place. Third reason, you don't know how. Okay, so you just don't know what to do. So you should be doing it. I just don't know how to do it. Right? No one's ever shown me. I've never been trained. Never been, never been, walked through exactly what to do. And of course, the fourth thing is that they just don't want to. Okay, and it's not just, and that just don't want to isn't because they're just being obstinate, right? Just don't want to, but because no one's really explained why this change is coming and what benefits it has for that individual, right? And so guess what? They're just railing against it because I don't want it. I don't understand what this is for, right? So really, it's one of those 4 things that we're looking for, right? Do I know I should be doing it? Have I been trained to do it? Do I have the right tools to do it? And do I want to do it? Okay, and so we're really looking for those 4 things, and quite frequently we don't see those things in place. And so there's a really good change management model out there called ADKAR. We use ADKAR as part of our delivery mechanism for our projects. We have a technical delivery plan. We also have an ADKAR plan that sits underneath that as well. And we make sure that as our project moves from one milestone to the next, that our ADKAR milestones are also included. So, we as well as doing a kind of technical implementation, that change management implementation is really important. Our US employees, in fact, all of our US employees are ProSize certified with ADKAR as well, to make sure we don't forget that.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat. There's so much knowledge built in those change management models like ADKAR or Kotter's 8 steps, isn't it? There's been a lot of work going to figure that out, so you don't have to go figure it out for yourself.
Right. This is absolutely true. Someone has already done the hard work, and just go use it, right? Don't try and come up with something fresh and new. That's why we didn't do it, right? There's already a model out there. Let's just adopt one of them. Choose your horse and ride it.
Yeah. Nick, the other final bit you mentioned, I think, is really pertinent, and I think it's often overlooked, is that audit check, that sequential, systematic check and review that gets done, which so often gets missed or doesn't get done. Right. And you can have entropy creep into anything. How do you find that looks? Why did you pick up on the importance of that, and how do you find that looks as you go forward?
Yeah, audit is so important. You can have the process, you can have the tool, you can have the adoption, but unless you audit it, every single process breaks down over time, regardless. Okay, if you don't look at it for more than a couple of weeks, it will start to break down. Every process does that. Okay, again, so many times we see this. Even in our company, right? You get 3 months down the road, you go, did we do this already? Hang on a minute, we solved this. We've even got a tool for this, right? We developed it, right? Why didn't it happen, right? And you start realizing it's no one's fault. Nothing went wrong, okay? Over time, the knowledge gets lost, things degrade. So processes are living, breathing things, okay? Unless you look at it and unless you interact with it, those who are old enough will remember the kind of Tamagotchi craze from, I guess, 20 years ago now, where you had to feed this, virtual animal and interact with it every day. To keep the thing alive, your processes are just like Tamagotchis, okay? You've got to focus on it. And that's really what the audit is all about. So what metrics, what KPIs, what agendas can you add that particular process into to make sure it's still being done? So is it a dashboard? Is it, every month you take, 100 customer calls or interactions and you make sure, hey, did we follow our process? So for example, again, take what we do, we take a random selection of 10 help tickets every week. And what we do is we run through the checklist. Did we create a knowledge article? Did we communicate with the client? Did we add a root cause to this thing? Did we, we go through all the things we should do as part of the process, and we make sure that actually these 10 tickets, what's the score, right? And that's effectively our audit score for this process. And if the score is not good, okay, something's gone wrong. Either the process isn't working anymore, okay, we need to go look at the process, or there's something wrong with our tool, okay, or it's something wrong with our adoption. Go figure out which one of those three or combination thereof has gone wrong. So, using those kind of 4 parts of the mechanism really helps you to fix stuff too.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think so often we just think that we've put a process in place, job done, dust off the hands and off we go. But it's not like that. It's going to fall over if we don't have another PDCA cycle, or at least a check on it, and then act based on that. And it's been such a learning through my career. I got to admit too, Nick. It's I'm sort of the kettle calling the pot black, is a saying in Australia anyway. That
it's so easy done though, right? You think the process, I've got a process, I'm done, right? Move on, next thing, right? It's such a natural way for us to do this. But again, unless you've got an audit or a mechanism that says, when something doesn't fall out, what are you going to do about it, right? How are you going to know?
Yeah.
If this process stops.
And a lot of companies, at least in Australia, have got quality teams and safety teams who do conduct audits and reviews, but they're more seen as a pain in the neck and a police rather than actually, they're a department that's throwing energy at this to help ensure that our processes don't head to entropy and don't fall backward. And I can learn from their reviews they do. I think there's a real shift to happen there in companies, isn't there? Is embrace this check, embrace the learning that comes from it, and improve from it.
Right, and the danger there, of course, is you think about audit as being this, tick box exercise or done by a separate team, and really it doesn't need to be like that. When we think of audit here, we don't have a any external auditors coming in looking at our process and ISO and all that sort of stuff. We don't have any of that. But really, the audit is about internally. How do you know? How do you, as the manager of this team or leader of this team, how do you as an individual know if this process is still working? And it doesn't have to be an elaborate, external audit process. Have a dashboard. We use dashboards a lot here, right? And it just highlights, hey, everything's green, we're all good, right? Actually, this against this, measure this against this, whatever it may be, how many, tickets have been closed this week without a solution, for example, added, right? Very simple ticker, right? But if that number starts growing, then you can say, hey, we got a problem, right? That is an audit mechanism in my book. That's part of your audit, right? It doesn't have to be this once a year tick box exercise, which, as you say, nobody really enjoys.
No, and it's too true, like that. Bringing quality into the process that you'd manage by yourself. That's best practice. Quality at the source. You can't beat it. Nick, what would be your 2-minute tip in this area of expertise we're talking about, mate? Which I've loved because I've seen it so much throughout my career. But what would be your 2-minute tip for listeners?
Really, it's mechanisms. Think about everything in terms of mechanism. Is there a mechanism that's going to back this up? So again, be clear about, is there a process? Is there a tool? Is there adoption? And is there an audit? If you don't have any one of those 4 things, do not be surprised that something doesn't stick or doesn't work or doesn't happen. Okay, and you've got to identify that the lack of mechanism very quickly. You've got to arrest it very quickly. You've got to say, hey, do we have a mechanism for this, or are we just making ourselves feel better for a while? And if it's the latter, and that's what we all agree, hey, we're just saying this because it's going to make us feel better. Hey, great. Okay, we're all going to feel better for 10 minutes. That's fine, right? If that's exactly what we're doing. But in business, that's not really what we're here for. So, challenging each other, what's the mechanism to make sure this happens, right? Just asking that very simple question. Do we have a mechanism, or is this going to make us feel better? And then it just makes people think, we don't have a mechanism. Okay, what's the process? Do we have a process? Okay, yes, no. Okay, do we have a tool? Is the tool working, right? Again, tool doesn't have to be a system. You don't spend thousands of dollars on a system, right? Just get a whiteboard, right, and a dry white marker, okay? Just start there, right? It doesn't have to be elaborate. Do we have adoption? Do people know how to do it? Have they been trained how to do it? Do they have the tools and the access to do it? And do they want to do it, right? Do you have adoption? And do you have an audit to make sure it stays in place? So really focusing on the mechanism rather than just making yourself feel better.
Yeah, that's awesome. Nick, thanks so much, mate. Nick, what's been a recent insight for you? What's been a recent learning you've had?
Well, it's a great question. I had an interaction a few weeks back with one of our manufacturing clients. And again, I've been doing this for 30 plus years, and I've seen kind of some technology come and go. What was really interesting, I think, a few weeks ago was out in a production line. First time we put tablets out on the shop floor for this in this manufacturing environment, and we had a keyboard and we had a mouse attached to it and all that great stuff. What was really interesting, though, is working with the operators, these newer, younger workforce. When they came up on the screen, their first reaction was to touch the screen, not use the mouse, not use the keyboard. Now, that's the first time I've really noticed that, okay, in a manufacturing environment, right? You put a mouse and a keyboard next to a screen, people are going to start using it, certainly my generation, right? But actually, the first thing people started doing was tapping the screen and moving things around. And my realization that, oh my goodness, we're building these things wrong, okay? We've got to build stuff, on how the new generation of workers actually expect to use it. And without even getting into, the virtual reality manufacturing and all that sort of stuff, which quite frankly is out of reach for, probably 99% of the businesses that we work with, at least, right? But just things like, you've got to start thinking about how this new generation are using touchscreen, and that's what they're used to using. And that was a real revelation for me a few weeks back that, wow, okay, manufacturing interaction with technology has shifted with this new generation, and that for me was a big revelation.
Yeah. It's the bulk of time is now spent on a phone, isn't it? And that's all touch screen. So
yeah, that's it.
A computer needs to be that way. That's amazing, mate. Nick, I really appreciate the knowledge and the insights and helping us, create that better future. But how can people reach out to you and connect to be able to get help and learn more? Because, I guess this is such a big opportunity for many companies.
Yeah. First of all, don't send me an email. So, actually, the best way to get in touch with us is through our website at silverdaletech.com. And within the website, we have forms built on just about every page that you can contact us through. The great thing about that is it doesn't sit in someone's inbox. We do have a mechanism in the background that captures every single one of those contact forms, and it makes sure that we follow up on that with a proper SLA in our system. So that is by far the best way of getting in contact with me.
Great, Nick. You're practicing what you preach, mate. That's awesome.
Eat your own dog food. You have to.
Well, Nick, thanks so much, mate. Thanks for sharing knowledge and helping us create a better future. And, mate, we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Bye for now. There were two key takeaways for me from this episode. Firstly, process, tool adoption, and audit. Nick described a great approach to think about sustainability of a system. In a way, it is applying PDCA thinking over critical processes and systems. Plan the process, tool, and adoption approach you want for a system. Implement a pilot or the whole improvement at once. And then instigate a monitoring and review system as part of your check and act approach to ensure the system sustains, but then also act based on your learnings to keep it going. And then keep applying improvement from there, of course, ongoing in the future as well. Every business or team has a number of critical processes or systems. This thinking really allows you to ensure that you have sustainability of improvement and process performance, but also can keep it continuously improving into the future. The second key takeaway for me was using technology to enable people and processes. Technology is amazing, especially when it is focused on enabling people and process. If you engage your people, work with them to understand their critical processes, then delve into what they could do to improve and where technology may help. This really provides a strong foundation for technology being successful. People, process, and technology thinking rather than the other way. Getting excited about a technology, trying to find what process it could help with, and then figuring out how to get people on board with it. What a great episode, Nick. Thank you so much for your insights and knowledge. Thanks for helping us create a better future. Bye for now.